I am Rachel, a part-time housewife in my late 20s. My husband, Tony, and I don't have children yet because I'm currently the deputy leader of an important project, and taking time off for a baby isn't an option for me. Additionally, Tony is also handling a significant work project, so we decided to wait until things settle down before starting a family. However, our peaceful life was shattered by an unexpected event. One night, Tony came home later than usual. He immediately undressed his suit and shirt, leaving them on the floor, and headed straight to the shower. Thinking it can't be helped, I picked up his suit, and a piece of paper fell out. Out of curiosity, I looked at it, and what I saw left me speechless with shock and anger. It seemed to be some sort of note that read, "I'll be waiting on the rooftop during lunch break. Let's make sure no one finds out about our affair." Although I wanted to confront Tony immediately, I decided to stay calm and put the note back in his pocket, thinking there might be more evidence to uncover. Little did I know that this small infidelity would lead to a major upheaval involving our entire family. After discovering Tony's affair, I did my own investigation. Hiring a private detective was too expensive for my current salary, so I gathered evidence myself. Eventually, I identified the mistress. Her name was Kathy, a 24-year-old recently hired as Tony's direct subordinate. Tony was her mentor, and their affair had been going on for several months. Despite Tony wearing his wedding ring and Kathy being aware of our marriage, they continued their illicit relationship. Unaware that I was collecting evidence of his infidelity, Tony nonchalantly praised my cooking at dinner, saying,
"Rachel, your cooking is the best in the world."
I forced a smile, knowing that revealing my investigation too soon would ruin all my efforts. Sometime later, my brother called me with surprising news. He said,
"I want to introduce you to the woman I want to marry."
My brother, in his early 30s and a section manager at a major company, had always been extremely busy, and I thought he might never marry. He planned a family dinner to introduce his fiancée and invited both Tony and me. Since Tony's company was a subcontractor for my brother's company, Tony agreed to attend, likely out of a sense of obligation. Though I was reluctant to introduce my philandering husband to my brother's future in-laws, I understood the timing and circumstances left me no choice. However, a few days later, Tony began acting unusually kind to me. He started bringing home my favorite desserts and sharing funny stories from work. This made me wonder if there was a chance to rebuild our relationship if Tony confessed and ended his affair completely. Although I had caught them together several times, their interactions were limited to meals and light physical contact, with no signs of a physical relationship yet. I hoped Tony had realized his mistake and stopped the affair, especially with my brother's important dinner approaching. I wanted to clear the air before the event. I waited for Tony to take the initiative, but aside from his increased kindness, he didn't mention anything. Recently, he hadn't gone out drinking and spent his weekends at home. We even went on a short day trip and enjoyed a high-end dinner together, making me let my guard down. However, my trust in my husband completely crumbled due to a certain incident. One evening, I went out for drinks with a friend. As we chatted over drinks and snacks, I confided in her about Tony's recent change and my thoughts of rebuilding our relationship. I asked, "He's been acting better lately, and I'm thinking of talking things through and rebuilding our marriage. What do you think?" My friend's eyes widened as she stared at something behind me. I followed her gaze and saw Tony, happily feeding his affair partner, Kathy, at a nearby table. The shock left me speechless. In this small town, rumors travel fast. My friend worked in the HR department at Tony's company and had heard whispers about their affair. However, she hadn't seen them together recently, and since Tony had been coming home early for my sake, she thought the rumors were just that, rumors. Seeing them together, though, left both of us at a loss for words. Snapping back to reality, my friend stood up, paid the bill, and dragged me outside. The winter air stung my cheeks as I finally comprehended the reality of what I had just witnessed. My friend's concerned words faded into the background as the image of Tony and Kathy lingered in my mind. She said,
"You mentioned Tony's been acting nice lately, like taking you on trips and dinners. Given that and the fact they haven't been seen together at work recently, maybe he knew you were onto him?"
I had been discreet in my investigations, and I hadn't confronted Tony about anything yet. The uncertainty of their actions made me incredibly anxious. My friend pulled me into a narrow alley as Tony and Kathy exited the bar, arm in arm, heading to Tony's car. My friend and I followed them, feeling a sense of dread as I recognized the route to our house. Tony pulled out his phone, operated it, and immediately, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tony asking, "When will you be home tonight?" It was clear he was ensuring they wouldn't be caught. I replied, "I'll be home around 2 a.m., a lie to gather more evidence." Seeing my reply, Tony told Kathy,
Rachel won't be back until 2, so we can relax.
and they entered our home together. The sight made me nauseous, and I collapsed, barely held up by my friend. The thought of Kathy entering my home was unbearable. My friend encouraged me, saying,
"This is hard, but we need irrefutable evidence to confront them. Stay strong."
2 weeks later, the day of the family dinner arrived. After that night, I took paid leave from work and investigated Tony and Kathy thoroughly. Additionally, for the difficult task of tailing him alone, I hired a detective. That friend from back then turned out to be the daughter of a company president. She said,
"I'll help for Rachel's sake,"
and introduced me to a detective she knew. As a result, I was able to hire the detective at a very reasonable rate, and now it's time to make the two of them face reality. In fact, this dinner gathering is the stage for that. Why, you ask? You will soon find out. When I dramatically opened the door to the private room, I saw Tony and Kathy turn pale. Kathy, who was supposed to be my brother's fiancée, stared at me in shock. "Nice to meet you, Kathy. I'm a wife of Tony, your affair partner," I said with a forced smile. The atmosphere froze. Kathy stammered,
"What? Why are you? You've got the wrong idea. If that's the case, it's rude."
Her feigned ignorance snapped my patience. I thought, all right then, I see you're ready. I won't hold back anymore. "Stop pretending," I said, spreading photos of their affair on the table. Tony panicked, scrambling to gather the photos, while Kathy looked aghast. Kathy tried to defend herself.
"This is the engagement announcement dinner. This is inappropriate."
She shouted with her eyes wide open. However, that doesn't matter. Thanks to the detective's investigation, I knew that this woman, despite being engaged to my brother, was continuing an affair with my husband and deceiving my brother as well. I countered, "What's truly inappropriate is deceiving my brother and continuing an affair with my husband." At my words, Kathy fell silent. I continued, "You've had affairs with married men before, right? And at that moment, you pretended to be unaware, playing the victim to avoid compensation and shifting all the blame onto the man. Isn't that right?" Kathy's expression showed she realized how much I knew. By hiring a detective, it's easy to find out such things. This time, in case I found out, she probably planned to pretend she didn't know anything and escape from paying compensation by putting on a crying act. I turned to Tony, who was trembling, and said, "You only acted nice to me because Kathy suggested it, didn't you?" Tony, teary-eyed, denied it.
No, Rachel, I only want you. It was a mistake. The relationship with her is over already. I was just enjoying the first few days. Please believe me.
I sighed, placing more damning photos on the table, evidence of their affair in our home. My parents were stunned, Tony was frantic, and Kathy turned red, trying to hide the photos.
Stop this.
Kathy pleaded. Of course, I don't want to see these kinds of photos either, and I certainly don't appreciate being labeled as a cheated-on wife. Nevertheless, my friend advised me that I needed to be bold to punish these two. Kathy glared at me with tears in her eyes, trembling.
Despicable. You're not the person I thought you were. This is way too much.
She grabbed my collar and said that, so I shook it off. You would escape again if I didn't expose you. Like last time. I heard you got away last time by pretending to have a hysterical fit.
No, it's not. That was...
At that moment, a loud slap echoed as Kathy's mother struck her face. In front of me, her mother slapped her across the cheek, and I saw Kathy freeze with a frantic look on her face.
What have you done? Apologize to Rachel.
She demanded, but Kathy resisted. Her father grabbed Kathy's head to force to bow, and he also bowed deeply, said,
I apologize sincerely for the terrible disrespect shown by my daughter. Please consider breaking off the engagement. I assure you that we will properly compensate Rachel, including returning the engagement ring and providing her with compensation. I am truly sorry.
As her parents bowed their heads in tears before us, she murmured in a voice as faint as a mosquito's,
Why am I being blamed?
In the end, today's meeting was interrupted, and it was decided to reschedule for another day to continue discussions. As we were leaving, seemingly indifferent now, Kathy revealed her true nature.
What's the deal here? Demanding compensation just because of a little fun. It's absurd. I can't forgive tearing apart our love like this.
She shouted wildly while our parents desperately tried to restrain her, drawing curious glances from passers-by. Oh, what an embarrassment she is, I thought to myself. Then, my brother stepped forward calmly.
Someone who can cheat so boldly isn't fit for marriage. Especially not someone who lays a hand on my sister's husband. And Tony, you better think about your position carefully.
After saying that to Kathy, he also directed a cold gaze toward my husband. Tony, shaking, apologized weakly,
I'm so sorry.
tears streaming down his face. Shortly thereafter, a meeting was arranged to discuss the broken engagement, our divorce, and the settlement for damages. After being thoroughly scolded by her parents, Kathy was completely subdued and silent. I stated, in our settlement, Tony will pay me alimony and we will divorce. You will also need to pay me damages. Kathy remained silent, but her parents responded,
We will make sure our daughter pays.
showing their willingness to comply. Although this should have been the end, I had something more to say. I contacted the wife of the previous victim you deceived and avoided paying damages to. She was furious when she learned the truth and plans to reissue her claim for damages. Kathy lifted her head and croaked.
No, that can't be. That was supposed to be over.
I replied coldly. You think it's over? You and Tony have no idea how deeply your actions have scarred others. Tony, who had been listening quietly, muttered.
I'm sorry.
Kathy, realizing the truth in my words, looked visibly distressed. In such a small town, having multiple affairs is quite bold. Regardless, you will pay the damages in full, I said, turning to leave. My family followed me without a word. I glanced back briefly to see Kathy's parents bowing deeply and Tony and Kathy staring in shock. Money alone couldn't resolve everything, but this was the best outcome. I took everything I could from Tony through alimony and asset division and divorced him. Their affair became known at work, leading to their transfer to different departments. However, the fact of the affair remains unchanged, and since it had already been rumored before, embellishments like apparently she was pregnant or apparently he was seeing 2 other people spread. Because of this, the 2 lost their place and reportedly resigned. Later, I heard that Tony, desperate for money, was arrested for fraud. Then, by chance, I happened to see the woman desperately working as a cashier at a supermarket. She looked completely different from her previous glamorous appearance, with a haggard and dark expression, being yelled at by her boss. This is the fate of the 2 who had an affair, but it's a case of reaping what they sowed. As for me, I apologized to my brother for ruining his engagement. But he said,
I'm glad I didn't marry someone with such secrets.
And comforted me. My parents reassured me that I had done the right thing, which brought me to tears. My friend, who had introduced the detective, joined me for a celebratory night out. I had feared judgment from my family for my actions, but instead, I felt supported and validated. Moving forward, I will continue to cherish those around me. To everyone watching, thank you for staying with me until the end. I love and appreciate you all. How did you find today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.